So something huge happened yesterday, and I've really not seen a lot of people talk about it. And that's the fact that in-game currencies are basically done for. Now, they're not in North America, but I have a feeling that everyone's going to follow suit. Now, I think a great person to make a video on this is Drifter, and he happened to make a video on this. And he says, the end of gaming currencies. This is a hugely important topic. And let him start out and you'll see exactly what's going on here. But this is big. This is really, really big.
Here, we might be on the precipice of a new era in gaming because the European Union is looking to get rid of COD points and V-Bucks and Robux and
all of them.
Basically every other type of in-game currency. They've actually already started this process and have sent new pricing clarity guidelines to developers to get the regulations rolling. And it's important for everyone because games will probably adhere to EU standards in non-EU regions, a lot like how the changes to loot box laws.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. So basically, loot box laws came out not everywhere in the world, just in a few countries. And it's a lot easier to develop one game than a bunch of different ones. So games like Overwatch, Call of Duty got rid of loot boxes altogether, or they wouldn't have been viable to have in the games everywhere.
China positively impacted American gamers. In case
Actually,
you didn't know,
that was
China changed the laws to where games published from their region are required to show the probabilities of winning prizes from loot boxes. This is the combat.
There were other countries that banned it altogether, I'm pretty sure. I didn't realize that China was just the probability thing. Of course, there's a joke somewhere about China and numbers, but we're just going to leave that alone.
Addictive gambling practices. And Chinese game companies didn't want to develop multiple systems for different regions, so now the vast majority of Chinese games that are released in the United States have exactly that, which is why games like Delta Force and Fragpunk have their loot box odds listed right there on the purchase page. So today we're going to talk about what the problem is and how the European Union plans to fix it. The problem, in a nutshell, is that video games are using digital currencies to obscure prices, and this practice has been going on for decades, but is only...
Also, they use it in a way where they get you to spend more money. So just like, to keep it simple, an item will cost 1,400 COD points, but you're only able to buy 1,000 plus 300, so 1,300 COD points at once, or 2,100 COD points. So either you're well above or well below, or a little bit below. So it either causes you to buy twice as much or a little bit too much. And then the next time you buy something, you're going to be a little bit off. You can't just buy that exact thing.
Getting worse with time. I want to give you two quick examples, one very basic and one very extreme. The basic example of this problem is actually Call of Duty and its COD points. You can't spend real dollars, real money to buy Call of Duty operator bundles. You can only...
You know what's weird about Call of Duty though? They have some bundles that are paid for, like with money, and like the Black Cell Battle Pass. I don't get it.
Only buy them with COD points. But Call of Duty points do cost real currency, and they're sold to you on a sliding scale depending on...
So this is what I mean, how it's 13,000 or 9,500 or 5,000. Like it's very weird amounts.
Much you buy. So if you buy just a tiny bit of COD points,
there you go, 1,100.
You get the worst deal. But if you go all the way to the top and get a giant $100 bundle, you get all these bonus points, thus making it mentally difficult to calculate how much a COD point is worth or how much 100 COD points is worth. Then all of the skins are priced at slightly unusual numbers so that you'll never fully spend all of your Call of Duty points and want to buy more to make use of them, and also not have the greatest grasp on how much the skin itself costs. It's just...
Also, this is a super psychological thing, right? So like the most basic example of this is they did a test for people on a budget where they would send you to the grocery store, and people who used a credit card would end up spending more money because it didn't feel as though they were spending real money. Just tap the plastic, move on. The people who were given cash actually spent less money because they could see what they were actually spending. If you see the dollar amount that you're spending, you're more likely to spend less than if you just see COD points. What the hell does that mean?
Just sort of difficult to mentally estimate. This is not a consumer-friendly practice by any means, but this is the industry standard right now. This one is very normal. Basically, every game company on the planet is doing this. A lot of non-game companies are doing this. but it can get a lot worse. Like, for example, the other game I play, Teamfight Tactics.
I don't know this one.
TFT has a battle pass, a seasonal event pass, direct purchases through Riot Points, and
Riot
direct
Points, okay.
purchases with Riot Points in their store. And there's all this crazy stuff going on with TFT in particular. Like, the only way to unlock custom characters with animations is to open loot boxes with very low odds. The loot boxes cost these little blue swirly points, whose name I keep forgetting. But you have to buy the swirly guys with Riot Points, but you have to buy the Riot Points with real money from some region. Then if you spend the blue guys, you can open loot boxes, and after a certain number of loot boxes, you get realm crystals. Realm crystals can only be spent on lower cost items in the rotating seasonal store, but after spending enough of all of this, you can earn a single medallion. After you earn 10 medallions, you can then automatically unlock some of this custom skins in the rotating store. The total...
Okay, Drifter, first of all, you did an amazing speech on this. That's unbelievable.
Price of this would be $500 to $600 depending on the skin.
Holy crap.
And I had to spend like an hour doing that math. Was it confusing to you? It was so confusing to me that I fully stopped spending money on this game despite thoroughly enjoying the game. So that's the problem in a nutshell. So let's talk about what the EU plans to do about it. The European Commission is requiring straightforward pricing for all microtransactions, so that instead of seeing how many COD points a operator bundle would cost, they want companies to actually show the total monetary amount. So it would be like 1,400 COD points, and then over here it would be like $18.75. You could actually see what the real world price is of the things you're buying. The European Union believes that it's deliberately confusing for customers who are trying to figure out the real world cost of a microtransaction to have these multiple currencies. And the quote that I pulled from this is, "The use of in-game virtual currencies psychologically disconnects the act of spending from real-world money for all players."
That's exactly what I was saying.
Which in turn leads to higher expenditures of real-world money. And here's an example of what the Commission wants it to look like. You can see they want to...
So they can still have the in-game currency, but it also displays the real-world dollar.
Display the in-game currency and the real price side by side. They don't necessarily want the in-game currency to go away. You can still do that. It's just you have to let customers know what it's really.
So this is kind of akin to what China did with loot boxes, because really they didn't say no loot boxes in games. They just said you need to show the probability. And by just showing the price, why don't you just charge the price? Unless there's some way of getting around paying fees for, like, whether your game's on PlayStation or Xbox, selling currency opposed to just spending money. There might be something to do with that, but at that point, just charge the actual cost.
Really costing. Beyond this, if the customer exchanges the points they bought for other points or other in-game currencies, that exchange rate also has to be shown with a local currency figure attached to it. That way you know what you're getting when you buy into the points, how much your cosmetics cost, and how much it costs to get a more premium currency if that's
that point, just charge dollars.
Path the game is pursuing. I think this is nothing short of fantastic, and I think this should have been the standard from the very beginning. Unfortunately, game publishers operated with essentially no regulations for decades, so of course the suits at corporate level wanted to build the most confusing system possible, because to them it's just a monetary extraction tool. They don't really care about customer sentiment as much as they care about shareholder returns. Next thing the European
100%.
Union is going to require is for developers to avoid practices designed to hide the cost of digital content, which includes,
you have an example of that?
They recommended them not having multiple currencies, which is a tad confusing because the previous section had a bit
get rid of the currencies altogether, man.
About a regulation for multiple currencies if they exist, but it was labeled as a practice to avoid. It was also requested that developers avoid requiring multiple exchanges of different currencies before making a purchase. So maybe you have one currency and a second currency and they buy different things, but you can't trade the two to pool the resources together and efficiently go buy another thing. This section more or less seems to exist to avoid companies making a workaround for the previous section. They don't want them to just add another layer of points to circumvent the law, and that actually just makes it worse for consumers. They're trying.
So in other words, you could buy Call of Duty points with real world costs, which they would display how much that item was worth. But then that item that you bought, you'd have to spend those items that you bought on something else to get the thing that you actually want. That probably made no sense.
Single digital currency system per game. There's a pretty small section of this press release talking about respect of consumers' right of withdrawal. And the TLDR here is that they want clear contractual language that is very easy for everyone to understand, i.e. no legalese, no giant terms and conditions contract. There has to be a summary page that is both honest and easy to understand. And the goal of this is to make sure that customers know what they're signing up for when they sign up for battle passes and subscription services. The European Union also wants to make it very easy to withdraw from these type of agreements. Sometimes it's hard to cancel, sometimes it's hard to get out. And canceling a subscription service should be just as easy as signing up for it.
Dude, I've been doing this lately, like going through my credit card, PayPal, things like that, and being like, okay, I need to cancel this, I need to cancel that. Some websites, I literally have to look up guides on YouTube of how to cancel my subscription. It's ridiculous.
It should be a couple of clicks and you're done. Matter of fact, the European Commission talks about the customers having a unilateral right to withdrawal effective immediately when they don't want the services anymore. Right now, some companies operate a little bit more like American gym memberships. Which if you ever had to cancel a gym membership, they bring up your contract, they try to negotiate a buyout for you. They tell you, well, you can't do this. It has to be this call center. You have to submit documentation in writing.
Okay, here's how you cancel a gym membership. This is how you do it, because they won't check and they'll immediately cancel it. You call the gym. I've done this before because they called me and they're like, hey, we see that your payment got declined. And this is actually what happened. I'm like, I canceled because it was during COVID. I'm like, I canceled this 6 months ago. And they're like, oh, well, it says that this is the card that it should be charged to. And I'm like, I canceled that card a while ago. But I canceled this membership like nearly a year ago. And have you been charging me ever since? And they immediately changed the subject because they knew I was going to try to get my money back from that entire year. So if you just act like you canceled it a long time ago, they'll just go and cancel it immediately because they don't want to back pay you. Pro tip.
Come in person and argue with the manager and just do anything to inconvenience you to the point where you're not going to cancel the membership. A lot of game companies operate like that too. And then finally, the biggest section of the document, which I'm actually going to skim over a little bit here as it's not directly relevant to my core audience, is a tremendous amount of consumer protections regarding vulnerable customers, particularly when it comes to children. A truly huge portion of these regulations are focused around protecting the most vulnerable customers. And the most vulnerable group of all is children, which is sad that game companies have decided to farm them for every penny that they're worth. But the European Commission doesn't want game companies to be allowed to directly market to children, at least not in certain ways that they've deemed to be exploitative. They also weirdly wrote that they don't want games to psychologically exploit children's mental weaknesses, which is aggressive. Very distressing that that was a problem to begin with, and a widespread problem that millions, hundreds of thousands, maybe people around the world, game developers and publishers sat down and said, you know what? I need to build my game to psychologically manipulate children. That's how I'm really going to make the most money here. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Should not have been a problem.
Like, think about it this way. Call of Duty, for example. All of their events, all of their battle pass is about the fear of missing out, right? It's if you don't finish your battle pass by this day, we have a countdown timer in the top corner. If you don't finish it by this day, all those things you paid for, gone. Well, who is that going to like? I missed out on it. I do not care. If a kid is like sees his buddy at school who's got that skin, and he's like, I'm not going to have that skin. I need to get this done. Mom, I need to stay up all night tonight because the season's done. Who's going to be distressed for that, right? That's kind of what that's talking about.
They want consumer-friendly markets and spending practices put in place. Part of the document also talks about wanting greater parental controls for greater oversights on children's spending. Yeah, and then finally, the European Commission requested that games be designed in such a way that the gameplay and monetary elements are separate. That means no pay to play, pay for energy, pay for turns. And they don't want the games designed in such a way that it's not fun or not playable if you're not spending money. I think all of this is great. I really hope that all of these regulations fully go through and get enforced. And I hope they do so in such a way that forces game developers to bring these positive changes to America as well. The only reason that that can happen really is that it's expensive to develop multiple secure financial transactions.
This is exactly what I said at the beginning.
Systems or different systems to display odds or loot boxes or whatever in a game, and it's a lot cheaper to develop one universal system for all.
Sometimes you guys are like, you've watched these videos before. I swear to God, I do not watch them. If I do, I always tell you, And that's literally what I said at the beginning of the video.
All regions, which is exactly what the Chinese developers decided to do when they were similarly regulated. I wish that America cared about the effect of these gaming systems on our children, the dark patterns, the marketing practices, the gamification of spending, the deliberate obfuscation of price, and designing these games to be addictive for kids like Fortnite. But I gotta be honest, Americans fundamentally do not care about that at all. Really just don't even understand it. The vast majority of people here don't give one flying fudge sickle what Facebook is doing to your children. So I'm not...
I mean, I don't... They do care. They only care if another country is doing it, like TikTok is like the honest truth. And that's because I'm a Canadian from the outside in. It's more so that the American culture is focused so heavily on revenue and people who are rich than it is on, I wouldn't say the poor or anything like that, but it is on keeping people safe, if that makes sense, from spending. That's gonna be a hot topic. That's gonna be controversial. But here, it's the end of the video, so if you disagree, feel free to disagree with me. But yeah, it seems like oddly like a country like China doing the thing with odds, or like the EU and things like this. It should be just like an all-around thing. But I also think it's just the American people are less focused on like the video game spending and like that, and like you really have to have someone in power who knows about these things in order to do something about it. And if you look like who has been in power, like did Biden even know how to use an Xbox controller? Does Trump look at video games ever? He's too big. He's out on the golf course. Like he's not playing video games. You need someone who's growing up with that. So like, yeah, maybe 20 years from now when someone who grew up with video games is in office, then we'll see some meaningful differences. But until then, I don't see anything happening like that. But this is good news. I would love for them to get rid of COD points. Just show me the dollar dues. And like, you know what? The prices will probably come down when they do that, because people will realize, oh, 3,200 COD points is $32. I am not spending $32. Hopefully, but we will see. We'll see if this passes through.